I'll tell you, some of the best experience I had were in Spain, because the Spanish have quietly run an incredible nuclear program for decades. And very few people realize that many countries, when they wanted to learn how to run a nuclear program, went and benchmarked in Spain.
Really?
Yeah.
What do you mean by that? Went benchmark in Spain? Like went and
So
learned
you
in
want to
Spain?
you
Or?
want to find how to do something well. You want to go and copy someone. You go and spend a week in their plant, whatever. Many people have taken the journey through Spain to see how the Spanish do it.
Is that because they have better wine than the Germans?
I just think they've had very good leadership over the years, very good plants, very good maintenance, and a very good attitude about the way they run the nuclear program. So very impressed with Spain. But the one that surprised me the most in many ways was Argentina.
Just because the facts are A, if the narrative is B and everyone believes the narrative, then B is what matters. But it's our job in our industry to speak up proudly, soberly, and to engage people in this dialogue. Those 2.5 billion people that are in energy poverty, they need us.
America cannot meet this threat alone.
If there is a single country,
of course, the world cannot meet it without America.
that is willing to
We're going to need you, the next generation, to finish the
overhaul
job.
nuclear regulation
We need scientists to design new
and
fuels.
focus on net public
We need
benefit
engineers to invent new technologies. We
over absurd levels of radiation
need
protection,
entrepreneurs to sell those technologies.
then we will march towards this.
We need workers to operate assembly lines that hum with high-tech,
We
zero-carbon
have
components.
unlimited prosperity for all humans.
We need diplomats and businessmen and women and Peace Corps volunteers to help developing nations skip past the dirty phase of development and transition to sustainable sources of energy. In other words, we need you.
Welcome to another episode of the Fire to Fission podcast, where we talk about energy-dense fuels and how they can better human lives. My name is Mark Hinaman, and today I'm joined by Neil Wilmshurst. Neil, how you doing, man?
I'm doing okay, thank you. Good morning.
Yeah, Neil's SVP or Senior VP at EPRI, Electric Power Research Institute. Really excited to chat with you today, Neil. Neil, I'm going to steal Robert Bryce's line. If you had met someone at a party or in an elevator and had 60 seconds to introduce yourself, what would you say? Please introduce yourself.
Okay, I'm Neil Wilmshurst. I'm a lifelong nuclear engineer. Clearly not from the USA, start off in the UK, start off in the Royal Navy, came across to the States about 20, almost 30 years ago now, and really been in the energy field one way or another all my career.
How long have you been at EPRI?
I've been at EPRI over 20 years now.
Wow. Wow. Okay. I'm excited to jump into that, but let's start with kind of your beginnings. Where'd you get your start?
Well, I started in the north of England in a city called Durham, which is home to the number 3 university in the UK after Oxford and Cambridge. So I grew up in a very kind of academic environment, let's say. About the age of 16, we had a school science trip to Calder Hall Nuclear Power Station on the west coast of the UK. And it kind of all started from there. I decided that looked neat, let's stay engaged with that. So that turned into, I went off and joined the Navy, and the rest is history.
What kind of plant is that, or was that?
It
Is it still
was, it
operating?
was,
I should know this,
no,
but
no, no. It was a plant which was designed to, really, the primary aim was to produce weapons material. But it also, the thing about Calder Hall was it was the first grid-connected nuclear power station in the world. And it was a Magnox plant, your graphite-moderated, water-cooled plant.
okay, awesome.
And
So
it's decommissioned.
Decommissioned now? Yeah, out of service. Okay. So Neil, what drew you to the Navy? What were you interested in that made you decide to go that direction? Other than nuclear, I
Well,
guess.
yeah, well, it's the classic story. My grandfather was in the Navy, my father was in the Navy. I wasn't told to join the Navy, but it was kind of like always in my blood, I suppose. And I interviewed for the Navy, and it's an interesting story. I was selected in the Royal Navy. You are streamed from the beginning. You either go in as an engineer, you go in as a logistics person, you go in as a pilot, or you go in, and the one everyone wants is to go in as what they call a warfare officer, where you're going to be trained to navigate ships, fight ships, and going to be admirals and all the rest of it. So I was selected to go down that warfare path, which was like supposedly like the crown jewel, the thing everyone wanted. And I went to the UK equivalent of Annapolis, which is a place called Dartmouth down in the south of England. And a friend and I were summoned to the captain's office one day, and it's like terror descends. And he basically said, okay, so you guys have done kind of physics, mathematics, chemistry, all these science things at school. We want you to go off and do an engineering degree and then go back and train to navigate ships and all the rest of it. So we were part of an experiment. So we were sent off for 3 years to do an engineering degree. Then I ended up on a destroyer off the coast of Beirut as the USS New Jersey was opening fire on Beirut. And if you're old enough, you remember it was the time when the US Embassy had been blown up in Beirut, and we were flying helicopters into Beirut and rescuing people and everything else. So around that time, I was spending a lot of time on the bridge, and one night talking to the captain in kind of 1 o'clock in the morning, he said, what do you want to do? I said, I've done this engineering degree. I want to use it. So he said, okay, what do you want? So I said, I want to be a nuclear submariner. He said, well, leave it with me. 6 months later, I was off doing nuclear training.
Wow, just like that.
Yeah, and there's a lesson there, though. It's kind of, don't be scared of making decisions. If you want to change direction, just ask, and quite often, if you don't ask, you don't get. And the other one is, no one's going to look after your career apart from you.
It's fantastic advice. I couldn't agree more. So, um, so how long were you in the Navy?
I was in the Navy 14 years. I think 13 years, I think, yeah.
Okay. And then did you jump directly from the Navy to EPRI or have something in between?
No. I was in the Navy, and it was the early 90s. And again, you have to be old enough to remember, but peace broke out. Berlin Wall came down, everything else. And the UK, like many countries, decided, okay, we're going to scale back our armed forces. Interesting timing, now we're going to scale their armed forces back up. But this was the start of the dip. And the way the Navy went about it was they said, we are going to let go 15% of the people. And it's not going to be merit-based. It's going to be a vertical slice in order to keep everyone's promotion prospects even. Which you think about, it's a very brave thing to do, but also a very fair thing to do, take a vertical slice. So I sat there and I decided, if I'm going to leave the Navy, now's the time. So I got ahead of the wave of people leaving the Navy, and that is when I jumped from the Royal Navy into the civil nuclear program at Sizewell B in the UK. So I joined what was then British Energy, which became EDF Energy.
Wow. And how long were you there? What was your role?
I was there 10 years, maybe. It's there's a 13 in here again. It's about 13 years ago when I look at the dates. Because, it's 13, 14 years when I was there. Yeah. There's some theme there around 13s and 14s. I think I get bored after 13 years or something.
Well, so you're 20 years of your career here, and that was what, some time ago too. I mean, not to age you, Neil, and you don't look that old on camera for those people just listening to this, right? Like, I was surprised to just learn just now that
Yeah.
your career had been that long. So
Yeah.
surely you've had lots of projects that you've worked on and experiences that kind of have been interesting. You want to just highlight a couple for the audience? And I mean, when you reflect on that time,
Okay.
what comes to mind? Yeah, real easy question, right?
Yeah, I've been really lucky. Many things. Probably the first one, if I pick one from the Navy, it was we took a submarine, what the UK calls refit. I think the US would probably call overhaul. We took a nuclear submarine through overhaul. It was the first one done in a commercial shipyard in the UK, and we came out with a brand new design reactor core as well. So that was very interesting, and taking a submarine through that, all the testing, bringing it out. So you learnt a lot there. Then if you go to the move from the Navy, of course, going to Sizewell, being part of constructing a brand new PWR power plant, starting it up, then taking it through the first couple of outages, that was something quite amazing. And then, of course, I was given the opportunity as part of Amagen, when British Energy and PECO got together, came to the US buying nuclear plants. I was given the opportunity to be part of that. So not many people get a chance to come and kick the tires on a gently used nuclear power station, decide whether to make the investment decision to buy it. So I got to do that. Then I came to EPRI, but what straddled me to EPRI was we ended up buying 3 Mile Island, and I was asked to stay at 3 Mile Island, which is how I came to the States. And one of the things I was involved in at TMI was replacing the reactor vessel head. So that got me going to Japan Steelworks for forging, to France for the vessel head being manufactured. The vessel head was flown from France to Pennsylvania in the Russian Antonov jet. So all that kind of thing was really amazing. But that was the link that got me to EPRI, because the conferences around EPRI, around vessel head replacement, it became the touch point. So I joined EPRI. And then, of course, EPRI, it's been multiple things. Many years ago, EPRI started looking at plant lifetime extension, or relicensing nuclear plants, get them from 40 years to 60 years. So we asked the question one day, well, why not 80? And people thought we were idiots. And then it's turned into now what we call long-term operation, and all the plants in the US are one by one go into an 80-year extension. And again, a few years ago, we asked the question, why not 100? And again, people thought we're stupid, but people are talking about it. So those have been some of the really kind of exciting things I've been lucky to be involved in. And of course, along the way, Fukushima happened, which kind of became the turning point for many things.
Yeah. Yeah, I want to talk about Fukushima, but I mean, just recapping, that's awesome, Neil. Like, build submarines, but watch PWR get built and commissioned, like replacing huge pieces of equipment, traveling the world. Like, what a dream career.
Well,
That's
yeah, it's
excellent.
time for a rest, I think. My passport's full.
Some people have that goal after they retire,
Yeah.
right? Like to fill up the past. So, what that the PWR project did
Yeah.
Sizewell C or
Sizewell B.
B.
Yeah.
Okay. Did you join during design, construction? Were there
I,
lessons from that the modern industry might be able to
yeah,
learn from?
I joined about halfway through construction. We
Okay.
started up in kind of mid 95, and I joined in 92, 93 timeframe. So it was pretty well along on the construction. The challenge with Sizewell, in many ways, was uncertainty around the project and the need for at least some effort to control budget. So during the project, that was when the conversation about Sizewell C started. And Sizewell C just had the final investment decision 2 days ago, to put it in context. So we're
Yeah.
talking,
And like 2 days ago now, like we're
yeah,
recording
yeah,
this
we're
July
talking,
23rd,
yeah,
2025, right? Like
yeah. We're talking 1993, 1994, the conversation about Sizewell C started. And Sizewell C was going to be one of a whole fleet of PWRs built in the UK. And that if you're building a fleet, it's really good. You've got continuity of workforce, continuity of supply chain, lessons learned, and everything else. But what happened is, incrementally, it turned into a single plant project. Sizewell B, everything else was cancelled. And then, under kind of budget pressure, and the thing that sticks in my mind is we were doing things which at the time felt wrong, and we transpired to be wrong. In order to control budget, we cut things out of the program. Like we deleted the air conditioning in the admin building to save money. We deleted
really makes people happy, right?
it's the UK, you don't need it. And then you've got things like lots of access platforms around the plant were removed from the project scope in order to trim the budget. But then, in the years following the plant startup, what did we do? We retrofitted air conditioning. We started building the access platforms. And that was okay. We justified it on, well, the build cost was reduced and that retrofit was done on O&M dollars. So I think the real lesson from Sizewell, though, was you need the certainty of the future of the project and also having the certainty of subsequent build. And we learned that in the US with Vogel. We went through the pain, the growing pains, the learning for Vogel 3 and 4, then we stop.
Yeah.
If you keep rolling, things get a lot better.
That's it's a repeated story in industry that hey, people need to fail to learn, and the industry hasn't really had a chance to fail and try again,
Yeah,
in a lot of circumstances. So, um, okay, so you took on your role at EPRI before Fukushima, right?
yeah. Yeah, I was in various roles at EPRI in the years from about when did I start at EPRI? I joined EPRI
According
in
to LinkedIn,
2003, I think.
2003.
Yeah. So I was doing various roles. In about 2010, I took over as the CNO, the new Chief Nuclear Officer. Yeah.
So I'm curious about this because we have what
Yeah.
14 years or so of hindsight now since Fukushima. Like,
Yeah.
do do you think the industry reacted correctly to that event? And just kind of walk me through what I guess if it happened again today, would things have been done differently? Would reporting be done differently?
Of course, Fukushima was. You've got to wind your mind back to think how were you thinking before Fukushima and how do you think today? And I tell
Yeah,
you, the result of Fukushima is all kinds of positive things happen to the industry. All kinds of things are different. I'll give an example. We never really considered the impact of multiple nuclear plant failures on the same site. We always tended to look at like a single plant, the single hazard, what happens to that plant. Fukushima and the multiple plants on the same site, that was a wake-up call. And just as a side thing, the first nuclear plant I ever visited in Japan was Fukushima Daiichi Unit 1. That was years before the accident. That would have been about 2011.
serendipitously. Yeah,
Exactly. In an outage in Daiichi Unit 1. So whenever I go back there, I've always got that thought. But yes, we never thought about that. And we never really dealt with the issue of how do plants support each other after an accident. And the other one, we always had this idea, this thought that organizations across the world would help each other. But we never really set up an infrastructure and a protocol and practiced it for what we would do following an event. So those things were out there, and the Fukushima event kind of caused us all to change. There's now emergency response centers set up that have communication protocols between each other. EPRI, IMPO, NEI, the NRC, the IEA in Vienna. Exercises talking to each other. There's all kinds of stockpiles of emergency equipment around the world, both in nuclear plants themselves and in centralized locations. So equipment can be deployed should an accident happen again. All kinds of changes to the way we look at events and multiple units on single sites. And there were questions asked, Fukushima, BWRs, hydrogen venting, the explosions, and all the rest of which we all remember. So the problem was that the contamination which kind of went out in the plume from Fukushima and the discussion over were the delays in venting the hydrogen because of concerns over contamination, that started a whole conversation about do we need to install what became known as filtered vents. Filters to scrub the gases coming out of the reactor before it vented up the stack. So that caused us to look at the design of BWRs and ask what it was we're trying to protect against. So again, all kinds of things that changed post-Fukushima. But one of the real lessons was just never convince yourself you know everything.
yeah.
Because we'd assumed things and then we got surprised. So the industry's in a far better place now.
That's good. Yeah, when I look at the Fukushima event, I think it's like one of the best examples of how safe the technology is. I mean, it's like the worst case scenario ever. And how many people actually were hurt from radiation?
So I can't remember the exact numbers. I tell you, it's less than 10. It's way less than, I'd say by radiation, like no one. But there was a couple of people drowned in one of the basements. I think it was one or two people died because the crane they were in collapsed. There were maybe at a stretch, there's a couple of people who might have been negatively impacted by radiation. But most of the deaths associated with it, of course, were due to the Fukushima and drowning and the public and everything else. And the sad thing is, in many ways, the reaction to the event caused so much turmoil and probably deaths due to people being relocated, their lives being disturbed. But actually, the direct impact from the nuclear plant Very, very few. And I hate to throw numbers out because there's always someone can do some analysis and all the rest of it. But it's certainly a small handful of people on the plants were killed, and the vast majority was industrial, not radiological.
Yeah. Which in my mind, that says like the radiological hazard is remarkably small. I mean,
Yeah,
relative to the tsunami risk, right? Like,
yeah,
I think, well, so my mother-in-law was actually over on the ground. She's a nuclear engineer, and she was on the site during or after the event. So
yeah,
she tells the story of there was a tsunami wall built, and they had a line on kind of like a higher wall that said, well, this is, a line that we could have built the wall to, and that they had anticipated building the wall to, but then they stopped early. So it was like protecting against the tsunami could have saved way more lives than maybe protecting against radiation.
yeah, exactly, yeah.
Yeah. I find that fascinating about the nuclear industry and kind of the mythology about nuclear is what are we actually protecting against? So,
Well, the thing is, you can't see radiation. That's the problem.
yeah, it's a ghost, right?
Yeah, and then you put having spent so much time in Japan, my wife had me count up the stamps in my passport the other day, and it's like over 50 times I've been to Japan over the last decade.
We've
And
had
you
more
put,
radiation from the flights, from the
yeah,
cosmic rays than any nuclear plant, right?
yeah, but you put Fukushima in the Japanese context, following Hiroshima and Nagasaki. It is a completely different dynamic in Japan, and you have to recognize that the public perception of nuclear is different in Japan than most other countries.
In a good way or bad way?
In a well, in a
Healthy
different
respect?
no kind of I think probably fear.
Here.
Yeah. Yeah. But it's notable in the last 10, 12 years or so that's turned around. And it's really in many ways driven by two things. One is the younger generation, because you've got the generation that remember the war of passing away, but also climate change. So Japan has actually, over the last 10, 12 years, really turned the corner and is majority kind of nuclear support in it, which would be unheard of 12 years ago.
Yeah. Okay. So I guess anything else to say about Japan or their reaction or I mean you
Yeah. Again, life's full of lessons. And again, I've been very lucky. Fukushima gave me lots of great opportunities to meet lots of great people and some many lifelong friends. But the Japanese made a kind of a problem for themselves in the day after Fukushima, which is worth remembering. When they established the new regulator, the NRA, in Japan after the accident, one of the early statements made was they were going to ensure there would never, ever be a nuclear accident in Japan again. You can't promise that. You can't
yeah.
promise that. You know, none of
That's a
us want one.
foolish promise, right?
Yeah, none of us
And
want one.
dangerous. Yeah.
Yeah, we're going to do everything we can to prevent one, but to say there'll never be one, what it does, it sets a context for regulation, which is basically going to be going to strangle an industry, and that's what Japan went through for a while.
Yeah.
So there's a lesson coming out of Fukushima: be careful what you promise.
The outcome of that is they've imported trillions of dollars of natural gas, right?
Yeah,
Liquefied natural gas to fuel their economy. I mean, their economy, if you can correlate economy and energy use or as expensive energy, like they've struggled since then,
yeah,
right?
yeah. I'll tell you, but the plants are coming back, and that again, you talk about projects proud of. So we worked on license renewal in the US, near 40 to 60, 60 to 80. So you've got the plants in Japan have been shut down now for 10 to 14 years, depending on what plants they are. And some of them be shut down even for much longer as they go through all the work. Considerable engineering work to bring them back to a standard which they need to be. So you think of the business case for doing that. You've got a nuclear plant shut there down for 10 years, 12 years, whatever. You're building seawalls. You're spending millions, billions of dollars putting new pipe supports and everything else, and you're paying all the staff. What's the business case? The only business case is if you can run the plant for longer. So it's not just extend the license from 40 to 60, like the US. What about the years when the plant is shut down? is the clock running when the plant is shut down? So we actually spent years working with our Japanese friends to develop the technical case which said the clock isn't running when the plant shut down, and actually given the basis to extend the life from 40 to 60 years. And that has been, in many ways, the biggest impact that EPRI's had in Japan. Is because without that work, which we did based on the work we did for the US fleet, the Japanese nuclear utilities wouldn't be able to restart.
That's awesome, Neil. You guys should be so proud of that. That's an untold story.
It
That's
is.
fantastic.
EPRI's full of untold stories, but that is probably the one of, and there's dozens, but that is one which we should be proud of, should talk about. Without the work we did, there wouldn't be a Japanese nuclear industry today.
Yeah, that's excellent. I mean, during your time at EPRI, the nuclear sector, I guess at EPRI, perhaps their global membership expanded a lot, right? Like, what
Yeah.
was the drive behind that?
Part of it was, every business has to grow. If you don't grow, you're actually declining because inflation takes over and everything else. Every business needs to grow by 5% or more a year in order just to stand still. So when you've got a business which is kind of fully embedded in the US, you've got to look other places to grow. That's the first thing. It was pure business thing. But then you look at the nuclear industry and it collaborates so well across boundaries. So we were getting surrounded by people saying, can you help us? Can we interact? Can you actually do this for us? And it became a nuclear industry kind of drive that people were coming to us saying, we want to join EPRI, we want to work with EPRI, we want to collaborate with others. And we just grasped the opportunity to be this hub of global technical collaboration. But the challenge for us was, and this is an analogy I used to use, you had to be careful. People could show up and join to say we're members of EPRI. It's like joining the health club. What we had to do was make sure they showed up at the gym and used the gym. And that is really what the big effort came over the last 10 years or so, is actually going around the world, actually teaching them the machines that were in the gym and how to use them.
I love that analogy. Were there perhaps countries or people that were more fit than others? Yeah, keep the analogy going.
Yeah, I tell you, it's been a surprise. Like every country, nuclear is different. Nuclear people are the same, though. They're all got the same drive, the same mentality, everything else. Some of the places I've enjoyed tremendously is China. You imagine we first went to China when they had they had two nuclear companies, they had CGN and CNNP. CNNP was up near Shanghai, was the kind of indigenous nuclear company. CGN was down near Hong Kong, was Western technology. And they had, between them, about 10 nuclear plants. So we got in there talking with them, and we've been part of the journey with them to now that China is just amazing the way that the nuclear program's growing. So they've been amazing, and you think that they had very few budgetary constraints, but they were wide open to learning, and just seeing how they've learned and helped each other has been amazing. So China's been fun. Europe has had nuclear for a very long time, but there's so much going on in Europe. It's always fun. I'll tell you, some of the best experience I had were in Spain, because the Spanish have quietly run an incredible nuclear program for decades. And very few people realize that many countries, when they wanted to learn how to run a nuclear program, went and benchmarked in Spain.
Really?
Yeah.
What do you mean by that? Went benchmark in Spain? Like went and learned?
So you want to find how to do something well. You want to go and copy someone. You go and spend a week in their plant, whatever. Many, many people have taken the journey through Spain to see how the Spanish do it.
Is that because they have better wine than the Germans?
I just think they've had very good leadership over the years, very good plants, very good maintenance, and a very good attitude about the way they run the nuclear program. So very impressed with Spain. But the one that surprised me the most in many ways was Argentina. So the view of Argentina, of course, is it's this Latin American country that's always in turmoil, the budget's a mess and everything else. But in the middle of all this, they're running some interesting nuclear plants. They've got Embalse up in the mountains, which is a can-do plant, and they're running it. They've just extended the life of it. They're running it very well. But then you go down to Atucha. They've got Siemens PWRs, but they're pressurized. They're a unique design PWR, like unique plants in the world. And you think, how does a country like Argentina not just run Atucha, but finish an Atucha unit after the Germans have walked away from the program? So they internally, in the country, completed the construction, startup, and operation of the second Atucha unit. And I went down there, and it was amazing. It was like this wonderful kind of group of what I'll call early to mid-career people. All these, from my perspective, young people who were really smart, really motivated, and had really done a great job actually working on this unique technology. So Argentina's been a revelation to me around how people can do it. Then don't forget UAE. UAE started from nothing. We've been working with UAE for the past decade or more now, and we've been with them kind of hand in hand as they've gone from nothing to 4 nuclear plants operating in the Gulf out there. And they're a great example of how to start from nothing, how to do a program right. And one of the things that sticks with me there, the CEO of ENEC, Mohammed Hamadi, he made a tough decision at one point, which has been lost in the kind of the annals of time. Unit 1 was complete, but the organization wasn't completely ready to run it. So they didn't start. They waited till everything was ready before they actually started the plant. How tough is that when you've spent billions of dollars building something to sit and look at it while you make sure the organization's ready?
Yeah, got to make sure your people are ready to go. That is impressive.
Yeah.
With just hearing you talk about all of the various places throughout the world, I've visited many of those places. I've not been to China, but I did attend a conference in Prague where the conference was moved to Prague from the US because the Chinese weren't allowed to attend if it was held in the US because of global tensions, international stuff. And I found that bizarre. I'll echo what you said. I was very impressed with the Chinese at the conference. Like, they are smart, they are very technical, and it's because they have experience. They're building this stuff. And I think there's sometimes a bunch of hubris in the West and in America that, oh, well, Chinese stuff isn't built quite as well as Americans. I'm really concerned that that's not true anymore.
Yeah. Without getting into politics and export control and everything else, but to say, everything we've done and are doing in China has to be within that bubble of what you're allowed to do and with complete transparency with people. So, and that's been a journey in of itself, but probably shouldn't cover that here, but making sure we stay in those boundaries. But you're right. I think there is this perception that from the good old days of China and toys being made and things being low quality, everything I've seen in the Chinese nuclear program is really high quality, really well done. If there's a challenge in China, it's and it's something I learned a while ago. Proficiency is the product of qualifications and experience. The Chinese have a proficiency challenge. They can qualify people, but they're growing so fast, you've got to ask yourself the question, do their people have enough experience? And the worry, if I had one in China, would be, yeah, they're great, they're building plants, they're operating the plants well, they're maintaining them well. How would they deal with something like Fukushima if all of a sudden they're outside the procedures? And I know they're aware of that, and I know they're trying to deal with it, but this whole thing, proficiency, is something the industry needs to be concerned about. You don't just qualify someone and they become a world expert on day one.
Yeah. Argentina is another really interesting one. I love Argentina. I've been to Buenos Aires and Patagonia and a wine country. I think it's an awesome country. Super friendly people and a lot of really, really hardworking people that, they've been dealt like a really rough set of cards. And so, your story about Argentina, it doesn't surprise me. Like, they're going to follow through with stuff and get stuff done, despite the circumstances.
Yeah. Exactly. And people forget they're building an SMR.
Okay, so why let's see, you said that expansion was necessary. for business. Has that played a role with kind of the culture of the organization, the what you guys have been able to accomplish over time?
Well, yeah, the interesting thing is EPRI has been viewed for years as an American organization. And when you start dealing globally, be it in the Gulf or Japan or Korea, wherever, or Europe, our staff need to understand not just the culture in the country, but they need to understand the regulators. They need to understand the different business models. All of a sudden, it changes the way you look at things. And it's very easy to show up in Seoul, South Korea, and try and explain to someone how to do something and use the American way of doing something. But the culture shift is, there's multiple ways to do things. Finding the way that fits the culture that you're in is really important. And that's been the big change in the organizations. Understanding the culture we're operating in and actually taking the lessons from around the world and bringing them together. And what our members see isn't just that we bring the American perspective, but you're having this conversation in Seoul, and you can be talking about what you've seen in France, what you've seen in South Africa, what you've seen in Brazil. And there's no other organization has the ability to bring that global context to a local conversation. And that is the real focus of what I've been trying to do for the last 10 plus years, is bring the organization along to have that, to recognize that unique opportunity we have to bring that global perspective to these conversations.
I feel like, I mean, we've had several members of EPRI on. I feel like I ask them this every time. So folks can go back and listen. But if they don't want to go back to listen to the old episodes and only want to listen to you, Neil, like
Yeah.
how can people get involved with this and with EPRI? I mean, you guys post a ton of research papers online, but are there physical conferences, ways to get involved, and how do people join this conversation?
So, I can say all this now. Kind of I'm getting towards the end of the career, if you like. But the challenge with EPRI is we've got a lot of information, and
It
for
can be daunting. You're like, I don't know, how am I going to
saying to
navigate
people,
this?
the challenge is you've got to meet people where they are. We could stand in the room and talk about whatever you want, but what we have to do is talk in the way that addresses your problems, your issues, your needs. And that is the ongoing challenge of actually messaging what you've got in EPRI to meet what your needs are. We don't need to talk about what we have, we need to talk about what you need. So that's the difference. So just dipping into the EPRI website, whatever, isn't going to be the most fulfilling thing in the world, because you're going to see lots of things and you're going to have to filter out the bit you want and find it. I'm not saying don't go there. I'm just saying it's hard because there's so much. So there's lots of conferences. You'll find EPRI popping up all over the place. Not just EPRI conferences, which tend to be really focused on our members, but you'll have EPRI people on conferences all over the world presenting or whatever. For example, I was at COP in Baku in November last year, and things like that. So EPRI is all over the place. The best way to interact with EPRI in some ways is, I say, go back to the website, and if you find something that piques your interest, there's a way to kind of connect with EPRI and get in that website to get connected to someone who can help you guide yourself through and find where to interact. But the EPRI interaction is mainly with our members, but we do pop up all over the place.
Yeah. So it sounds like you guys need a feedback loop and need to bring information back into the organization, right? So like as much as you tell people and you've published, it's just as important to you guys for people to give feedback and communicate where they're at and what their needs are. So important for you. Yeah, important for you guys to listen. So I guess that's an encouragement, right? Reach out if folks here want to be involved and want to learn more, then step one might be, go to the website, but also reach out and tell you guys what their needs are.
Yeah, and and recognize that now EPRI is a very global operation. There's so many different perspectives, and what is the priority in the US might not be the priority in Japan, might not be the priority in Argentina. But at the end of the day, there's a huge amount of work going on, and all of it informs each other.
Yeah. I've got my notes. World Energy Council.
Mm.
Talk to me about that. What is that? Why is it important? Did you have a role there? Yeah.
World Energy Council set up about 100 years ago, coming out of the First World War, where it was recognized that countries needed a forum to talk about energy issues. And if you go back and look at the first meeting of the World Energy Council, the people at Einstein were there. It was that big a deal. So the World Energy Council is affiliated with the UN, and it's kind of the place where people come together to talk not just about nuclear, not just about renewables, not to talk about solar or fossil, whatever. It's to talk about oil and gas. It's to talk about energy and energy issues. And what it's really become over the years is not the technical place, because we're all very good at going straight to technology. But energy has an economic, a societal kind of angle as well. And the World Energy Council really based its conversation around this trilemma of energy security, energy sustainability, and energy affordability. And if you think about that and have a conversation, bring your people together, and this is what World Energy Council does. It looks at that societal aspect of energy and decisions that are being made, policies that are being made, opportunities out there. What can we do to bring along society? And I mentioned I was at Baku. I was talking to a gentleman who'd been chair of one of the COPs, and I can't remember which one it was now. But he said to me, the challenge the world faces now is not making the cheapest solution to clean energy, but making the right solution. And if you think about it, where we may sit there thinking, okay, it's got to be the cheapest, but there's a right solution which addresses all the societal aspects as well. And that's what's going on at the moment. And a great example I heard someone talking about was, think about electric vehicles. So you want to increase the deployment of electric vehicles. First thing people say is you need more chargers. So where do you put the chargers? And actually what some people are saying is, you need the chargers in low-income areas. Why do you need the chargers in low-income areas? Because that's where the taxi drivers live. So they need to be able to charge their cars when they're at home. And there's issues like that which don't come up if you just look for the cheapest option. Because you and I would just put the chargers in the high-income places, because that's where the people have the big, have the expensive EVs. But the societal thing says, no, you need to find a way to put chargers in the low-income area because of cab drivers.
Yeah, it's kind of multifaceted
Yeah.
impacts, or the compound effects, right?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
second tier. Yeah, that's a great example. Do you have another? Not to put you on the spot. I'm just curious.
It'll come to me in a minute. Give me a minute. it'll come in
All
a
good.
minute.
Well, we've got another question. The Gulf region has been an emphasis recently as EPRI's
Yeah.
expanded globally. Why? What's driving that?
Well, I mentioned earlier about Baraka, but
Yeah.
the other, if you've been to the Gulf and look at the Gulf, we all know intuitively there's sovereign wealth funds are pretty well stocked there. So there's a lot of money there. And also there's a drive there to look beyond the oil economy. They start to say, what comes next? And intuitively, like Dubai is focused on tourism. Abu Dhabi is looking at education. They've got this buzzword, the knowledge economy, and healthcare and things like that. So they're trying to diversify the economy. But what's happening is massive investments in energy infrastructure, transmission being built, generation being built, different looks. The biggest solar park in the world is outside Dubai. It's 40 square kilometre solar park. So all this is being built. Look, you're at Saudi. They're talking about building huge amounts of solar, huge amounts of transmission. They're talking about building nuclear plants and everything else. So all this is being done, and it's being done in a pretty unconstrained capital environment, an environment where permitting is a lot quicker because there's lots of wide open spaces. You want to build a transmission line, you can build it. There's only camels in the way. There's no settlements in the way. So what's going to happen is the Gulf in many regions is going to be a testing ground, and it's an awful pun, but almost a sandbox for deployment of technologies around the world. So there's lots of learnings in the Gulf that the rest of the world can see. But the other side is the people making the decisions in the Gulf want to learn from the rest of the world. So EPRI can bring lessons from the rest of the world to help them make better decisions. And then we can actually learn from what they've done and share those with the rest of the world. So that's really the driver. It's an incredible opportunity to be on that cutting edge of technology deployment.
Yeah, that's awesome. I've been to Dubai. Very impressive city.
Yeah.
Simultaneously dry and humid, hot and humid.
Yeah.
It's bizarre. Yeah.
Yeah. But I'll tell you an example, that solar park. It was last year, there was a storm in the Gulf, and you've probably seen the photos. The streets of Dubai were flooded and all the rest of it. But as part of that storm, the wind going through the solar park wiped out 1 million solar panels. 10% of a solar park was destroyed there. So again, you can learn from that for the rest of the world. What's the impact there? Actually, the standards you built the solar park to. What standards were built to, the designs of the solar panels. So learnings from Dubai can help the rest of the world as they're deploying solar panels.
Yeah. That's crazy. Okay, Neil, we're coming up on our time. We've mentioned or alluded to it a couple times in the episode. What you're calling it quits? You're retiring from EPRI soonish.
Yeah.
Are you excited to retire? Are you going to be staying in industry? Talk to us a little bit about the future for you.
Yeah, I'm excited. It's time. I've spent a whole life in the Navy or whatever, traveling. So it's time to pay back to my wife, if nothing else. But like ever, you never quite retire. So what am I going to do? I'm going to train as a sommelier, which everyone's jealous about. I've set up a workshop in my basement, and I'm building a steam engine. But the other thing is, like, you never quite retire. I've actually got into staying in the industry and working with ASME, the American Society of Mechanical Engineers, and really focusing on what has been a core part of what I've been trying to do for the last few years, is looking at training and development and nurturing the next generation of engineers. And there's a part of ASME called the ASME Foundation, which is all around finding ways to bring STEM programs at schools, all the way through universities, all the way through career support, and bringing the next generation of engineers in. So I've been very fortunate being asked to lead the efforts of the ASME Foundation. So that's going to be my kind of, hopefully about a day a week kind of contribution to giving back. Try and make sure that we can maximize the effort of the ASME Foundation to help the next generation of people follow on, because I can tell you that you can have all these dreams of tripling nuclear or whatever it may be, or tripling solar, whatever. It's going to need people. Even with AI out there, you're going to need people to run the plants, to build the plants, design the plants, or whatever. There's not enough engineers being developed, not enough people staying in engineering, and that's what we've got to do. So that's in between the wine tasting and the steam engine building, going to be doing some giving back through ASME.
What a retirement! I'll air quotes retirement, right? Like,
Yeah,
most people are like, yeah, no, I'm going to travel the world and
yeah,
hang out with grandkids, and you're like, nope. Take up a brand new hobby that some people have as a profession, be a mechanic and machinist in my basement, and then help develop a whole new generation of workforce.
yeah.
Well, Neil, we've really appreciated the time. Yeah, thanks so much for chatting with me.
Okay, hey, thanks a lot.
Cool.